I could feel inside myself that reporting was not the right thing for me, even though I was happy to have the job.
Right.
I got an offer to go to Atlanta. I was making $10,000 a year in 1971, but still in college, so I was thinking I was doing pretty good. I got an offer to go to Atlanta for $40,000, which I thought, it's over. I'm gonna make $40,000. And my boss at the time said to me, you do not know what you don't know. And you need to stay here until you can learn to write better, until you can perfect your craft as a journalist. And so he said, and we can't give you 40, but we can give you 12. So I stayed, and you know the reason why I stayed is because I could feel inside myself that even though the 40 was alluring at the time, that he was absolutely right. So to make a long story short, because I'd be here all day just talking about how it all came about, I started listening to what felt like the truth for me. A couple of years later, I moved to Baltimore. I could feel that as a reporter, and by this time, 22, I'm making 22,000. I met my best friend Gail there who said, oh my God, can you imagine if you're 30 and you're making 30,000? And then you're 40 and then it's 40,000? We actually had that conversation in the bathroom. So I started to feel that reporting wasn't for me. But I had my father, I had my friends, everybody was saying, oh my God, you're an anchor woman, you're on TV. I mean, you can't give up that job. And by the time I was making 25, my father goes, well, you just hit the jackpot. You're not gonna make no more money than that. That's just it. So I was torn between what the world was saying to me and what I felt to be the truth for myself. It felt like an unnatural act for me reporting, although I knew that to a lot of people it was glamorous. And I started to just inside myself think, what do I really want to do, what I really want to do? And I will say this, knowing what you don't want to do is the best possible place to be if you don't know what to do. Because knowing what you don't want to do leads you to figure out what is it you really do want to do.
So you discovered talk then, right? Around that time?
I didn't discover talk, I got demoted. They wanted to fire me, but I was under contract. And they didn't want to give up the 25,000. So they were trying to keep me on to the end of the year. So they put me on this talk, this is the way life works. They put me on a talk show to try to avoid having to pay me the contract out. And the moment I sat on the talk show, interviewing the Carvel ice cream man and his multiple flavors, I knew that I had found home for myself. Because when I was a news reporter, it was so unnatural for me, to cover somebody's tragedies and difficulties, and then to not to feel anything for it. And I would go back after a fire, and I would take them blankets, and then I would get a note from my boss saying, "What the hell are you doing?
Right.
You're just supposed to report."
Can't be that empathetic.
You cannot be that empathetic, and it felt unnatural for me. So if I were to put it in business terms, or to leave you with a message, that the truth is, I have from the very beginning listened to my instinct. All of my best decisions in life have come because I was attuned to what really felt like the next right move for me. After starting with a co-anchor and working in talk for several years, I knew that it was the right thing to do. And I knew that if I didn't succeed, because at the time there was a guy named Phil Donahue, who was the king of talk and was on in Chicago, and every single person except my best friend Gail said, you're gonna fail. Every single person when I left, my bosses by this time thought I was terrific and said, you're walking into a landmine, you're gonna fail, Chicago's a racist city, you're black, you're not gonna make it. Everything to keep me staying. They then offered me a car and an apartment and all this stuff. And I said, no, if I fail, then I will find out what is the next thing for me. I was not one of those people, all of my the people who worked with me in news, they would have their tapes and they'd have their stories and they'd have, resumes ready. I didn't have any of that because I knew that the time would come where what I needed would show up for me.
Okay.
And when that showed up, I was ready. Because my definition of luck is preparation meeting the moment of opportunity.
Right.
And I was prepared to be able to step into that world of talk in a way that I knew I could do it. Usually the only Black person in the room. Also, never really concerned me because I don't look at people through color. I didn't get to be where I am and who I am by looking at the color of people's skin. I really, literally took Martin Luther King at his word and understand that the content of a person's character and refuse to let anybody else do that to me. So I love it, just love it. And there's a wonderful phrase by Maya Angelou from a poem that she wrote called To Our Grandmothers, that she says, when I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. So when I walk into a room, and particularly before I have something really challenging to do, or I'm going to be in a circumstance where I feel I'm going to be, up against some difficulties, I will literally sit and I will call on that 10,000. I will call on the ancestors. I will call on those people who've come before me. I will call on the women who forged a path that I might be able to sit in the room with all of those white men and love it so much. I call on that because I know that my being where I am, and first of all, being who I am and where I am, didn't come just out of myself, that I come from a heritage. And so I own that. And I step into that room, not just as myself, but I bring all of that energy with me. So it has never been an issue for me, except when I was, I think, 23, still working in Baltimore. I'd gone to my boss and said that the guy who was working with me, my co-host on the People Are Talking show, was making more money than I. And we were co-hosts. So I went to my boss and I said, this is in 1970, so I was older than 23. It was 1979, 80. And I said, I just would like to, you know how intimidating it is to go to the boss in the first place, but I'm gonna go and I'm gonna stand up for myself. And I said, Richard's making more money than I am, and I don't think that's fair because we're doing the same job. We sit in the same show. We did the same. And my general manager said, why should you make as much money as he? And I said, because we're doing the same job. And he said, but he has children. Do you have children? And I said, no. He said, well, he has to pay for college educations. He owns his own home. Do you own your home? I said, no. He said, he has a mortgage to pay. He has insurance. Do you have that? No. So tell me, why do you need the same amount of money? And I said, thank you for your time. And I left. I didn't complain about it. I didn't file a suit about it. I knew that in that moment, it was time for me to go. And that I started the process for myself of preparing myself for, you will not be here long. You are not going to be able to get what you need. I had a boss at the time who was African American and had just been, for the first time, made an assistant news director and was drunk with power, and felt it I think he woke up in the morning thinking of things he could do to harass me. I decided not to file a suit against him because I knew at the time I would lose, that no good would come of it, that I would be blackballed in television, that it would turn into a major thing. And I knew I didn't have long to stay there. I had a vision for what the future was, even though I couldn't place exactly where my future would be. I knew who held the future, because I am really guided by a force that's bigger than myself. I know that I will be sitting in the same room, and it happened like in the late 90s. I had the Oprah show and I ran into that guy. Lord Jesus, thank you. Oh my God. Oh, one of the sweetest moments I've ever had. Mine wouldn't be lean in, it would be step up and into yourself. Because this is the truth. There is no real doing in the world without being first. For me, being, your presence, your connection to yourself and that which is greater than yourself is far more important than what you do.